What I've Done. Written by Night Breeze. Read by No One and Nobody. Chapter 20. With a noiseless explosion, the Purpose warped back into local space, the runes that covered its hull pulsing with energy as the ship powered down.
"How are we doing?"
Akitesh asked as she pressed the button for the intercom.
"We're running pretty smoothly, but I'm going to take the Q-tie runes offline for now. They were making a rather disturbing sound, and I'd rather figure out why before we try that again. Also, it looks like the dimensional distorters and engines can't handle that kind of power for extended periods of time,"
Alizar responded.
"What makes you say that?"
Jedon asked as he shared a questioning look with his priestess.
Well, the runes that guide those particular systems have started to degrade. They'll still work, but I'd rather repair the system before we even think about making another jump like that again.
Akitesh nodded at that, her face twisted in concentration.
"Noted. Mentavira, is the planet in range?" "Yes, my priestess. We appeared a bit too close to the planet's moon, but I've already made a course correction to ensure that we don't run into it,"
the helmsman answered.
"Thank you, Mentor. Deacon Geralt, do you sense anything?"
The deacon at the sensor interface turned to look at Akitesh.
"I do, my priestess. There appears to be 2 Kryn satellites in orbit around the planet. Based on their position, as well as past experience with the Kryn, I would extrapolate that they either have a 3rd satellite or a ship in orbit on the far side of the planet."
"Have they detected us yet?"
Akitesh asked.
"They have. Yet we have received no communications as of yet."
"Open a channel,"
Akitesh said as she rose from her seat.
"Attention, unknown Kryn force. I am Priestess Akitesh of the Purpose. Please identify yourselves."
The Cusan on the bridge waited for a full minute of uncomfortable silence, until finally Jedon got up to stand next to his priestess.
"Maybe it is only a satellite network left by the downed craft?"
he asked hesitantly. Akitesh shook her head at that.
"No, there's more to this. I can feel it. Mentor, take us around the planet. I want to see this 3rd object." "Of course, priestess."
"O Lord Carr, raise the shields,"
Jedon ordered.
"I hear and obey,"
the warlord at Tactical said as he adjusted a few things at his console. They didn't have to wait very long before a Kryn destroyer came into view. Akitesh was immediately put on edge by this sight, as she not only recognized the ship from her vision, but also saw the ship's wings were already unfolded, its weapons glowing with power as it waited for the Purpose to come into range.
"All hands! Battle stations!"
Jedon shouted just before the Kryn ship opened fire. Right as the bridge shook slightly from the impact of the Kryn missiles and plasma fire, the lights dimmed and the bridge's Telmar rune came online. A rune that not only enhanced the concentration of everyone caught in its soothing light, but also allowed them to process information much faster.
"The enemy is moving at Mark 4 and is trying to strafe us. Powering up our disintegrator cannons now,"
Warlord Carr announced.
"No, instead deploy countermeasures, as well as our energy siphon drones,"
Akitesh ordered.
"I also want a line of disruption torpedoes to light up her nose."
"I beg your pardon, priestess, but this is clearly an act of war. We must—"
"Did I stutter, Warlord?"
Akitesh asked, not even bothering to turn towards her technical officer.
I want them alive. Please do not make me repeat myself.
Firing now. Apologies, priestess. I spoke out of turn,
Carr said, as he relayed orders to Tactical through his console.
I understand your hesitation, but please, trust me on this. We want them alive and their ship undamaged, if possible.
Akatesh answered him. She then turned to her helmsman, her two left eyes closed, as she thought about what to do next.
Vera, I want you to make evasive movement towards the planet's sun. Keep the star at our back and power up our star harness.
Priestess, you can't possibly be thinking of throwing the star at them. Not only do we need a whole fleet for that, but it would kill them even faster than our disintegrator cannons would,
Jadon said in disbelief.
I am aware of that. I do not want to use the star harness's primary function. Rather, I believe we may need to make use of its secondary function, a solar flare.
Akatesh answered.
Do not use the star harness until I give the word, however. We do not want to reveal our power too early.
Reveal to whom, priestess?
Jadon asked, as they started to move towards the star, barely avoiding another round of plasma with their movement.
I cannot say. Just keep pressure on them, and inform me the instant their shields are down,
Akatesh said as she sat down in her seat, her tail coiling up in front of her chair as she did so.
I beg your pardon, priestess, but without our disintegrator cannons, the enemy will be able to breach our shields before we're able to breach theirs.
Carr interjected.
I am aware of that. I also do not think we will be fighting this battle alone,
she answered cryptically. Jadon and Carr both gave her a questioning look at that, but otherwise held their peace.
Carr, how does the star harness look?
Jadon asked as the ship reached its position. Carr didn't answer at first, his face clouded over with a look of pure confusion.
That can't be right,
he said after a few moments.
What is it?
Jadon asked.
Sir, readings indicate that the star is already harnessed to something on the planet. The aura harnessing it is strange, shifting, almost as if it were alive. I cannot synchronize with it,
Carr answered.
That can't be good,
Jadon said, gritting his fangs in frustration.
It can't be helped,
Akatesh told him with a dismissive wave.
The star harness was merely a preventive measure anyway, in case the cowards were lying in wait as they did in my vision,
she thought to herself.
Anyway, redirect all power being used for the star harness to the ship's shields, but keep the star at our backs for now.
Yes,
Carr started to say, but stopped when the Kryn ship in front of them suddenly stopped firing.
The enemy has stopped. In fact, they've completely shut down. Weapons, shields, engines. They're dead in the water, my priestess.
At this, Akatesh stood up again, her face breaking out in a grin.
There we go. I want a boarding team ready in 5 minutes. Ensure that a medical team goes with them.
Yes, priestess,
Carr said after a few seconds, still clearly trying to comprehend what he had just seen.
However, they must take a shuttle. Keep our ship at a distance, and only drop our shields when the shuttle is ready to launch,
Akatesh said as she moved towards the view screen.
Lower the threat level of the ship, but the crew is to remain on high alert.
Yes, priestess,
Jadon said as the Telmar runes powered down, returning the bridge to its normal level of illumination. Sergeant Cassianon looked up blearily at the hissing, sparking noise coming from the airlock. He was faintly aware of the fact that he should be doing something about that, but between the blown-off legs, and the drugs he had taken to take the edge off the pain, he really couldn't bring himself to care.
Let the freaking captain take care of it. Just let me enjoy the pink zargans in peace.
He grunted as he let himself slump down to his side. In truth, the drug he had taken wasn't a hallucinogen, so he wouldn't be experiencing any of the sort anytime soon. It did, however, make him a lot more relaxed, as well as give him a bit of a high. So it wasn't too far of a stretch for him to be cracking such a joke. That, and the fact that he felt he needed some humor to take the edge off of the whole dying thing he was experiencing. He looked up blearily, watching with morbid fascination as the airlock was casually cut open from the other side. The huge steel door falling forward, crushing one of Cassianon's dead team members underneath its weight. As soon as the door opened, 4 lithe forms slithered out of the hole it left behind.
Move! Secure the... By the Maker! What happened here?
A voice said in High Cusan, as all 4 stopped to take stock of the scene in front of them. The hallway was covered in gray Kryn blood, its owners strewn about the hallway, laying haphazardly where they had died. From the walls and ceiling of the corridor, they could see a number of point defense weapons, all broken or burnt or missing entirely, leaving nothing but smoldering stubs where they had once rested.
The ship's computer,
Cassianon grunted as he pulled himself into a reclining position. He heard some shuffling, slithering sounds, as well as someone shouting,
"Don't move!"
But that hardly mattered to him at that point.
Please, warrior, put down your weapon, unless, of course, you're suggesting this crippled Kryn could possibly be a threat.
Cassianon heard someone ask. He blearily looked up, getting his first real look at a Cusan without battle armor. The Cusan were long, but rather short when they stood up. From the tips of their tails to the top of their heads, they measured in at around 10 feet in length, bending in half near the middle so they could stand upright when they slithered around. Their upper halves were highly reminiscent of a hominid's, having 2 sets of arms, all of which ended in hand-like claws. Their scales were a dark gray, and seemed to almost glisten in the dim emergency lights that illuminated this part of the ship. Despite so many similarities to reptilian bioforms, however, the Cusan possessed heads that were only vaguely serpentine. They had almost no snout to speak of, their faces being far flatter with only a slightly protruding nose that sat in the center. They also had an additional set of slitted eyes, positioned just a few centimeters above their first set. All of this added up to create a face that was far more expressive than a Kryn's, allowing for a much more common range of expressions than the Kryn's twitching antennae would allow. The Cusan in front of Cassianon was dressed in a green suit, with the image of a large, red flying reptile of some kind splashed on the front. In his right hand, he carried a green case with a similar emblem splashed on its side, while in his left he carried some kind of rod-like device that was pointed squarely at Cassianon's chest.
"What's your name, warrior?"
the Cusan asked softly in Cassianon's native tongue.
"Well, I'm Sergeant Cassianon. We surrender. Captain told us to surrender. We surrender."
Cassianon said faintly as a soft, soothing light washed over him.
"Shh. It's okay. I understand. Sleep for now."
He hushed softly as he slithered closer, the gray blood staining his otherwise pristine lower garment.
"Warrior, call the purpose. I have the distinct feeling we're going to need a lot more healers. See if the priestess will also spare a mage or 2, since we'll probably be needing them before too long as well."
Cassianon heard, right before he slipped into unconsciousness.
"How are you holding up, Chief?"
Yvtil asked, as she applied another bandage to the reclining technician.
"I'll live,"
he grunted as he leaned forward to allow the commander to reach his back.
"Can't say the same for whoever did this to my boys and my baby." "I know. We'll get her up again and running in no time, you'll see,"
Yvtil said with a twitch of her remaining antennae.
"I don't care about that.
My baby's a thing. We can always get her working again with enough effort. My boys, on the other hand,
he said, gesturing towards the carnage laid out before him.
Those are lads we'll never get back.
I know what you mean, Chief. I was trying to keep you occupied with other things, rather than dwell on your subordinates,
Yivtil said as she sat down heavily next to the wounded technician, her 3 remaining legs folding up underneath her.
Why did the computer do that, though? A hack? A saboteur?
No, at least, not like that it wasn't. You wouldn't have been able to gain administrative privileges like that, at least not so quickly. We also would have spotted a stowaway on board by now,
he answered, adjusting himself a little. At that, however, Yivtil gasped as something occurred to her.
Chief, we do have a stowaway on board.
He looked at her at that, his antennae twitching in confusion, at least until it dawned on him what she meant.
No, we purged that traitor's clearance from the system.
Yes, but he had administrative privileges before he was found out. Since he was special operations and everything. In fact, up until he was relieved of duty, he was the highest-ranking officer aboard the ship,
Yivtil pointed out. Chief Alls pondered that for a few seconds.
It's possible that Illis could have planted the virus, but...
he started to say, but stopped when he heard a faint hum coming from the door in front of them. He straightened up a bit at that, giving his commander a death glare.
So help me, if they harm my baby any more than she already has, I'm going to rip their throats out.
Before Yivtil could answer, however, the doors to the reactor room started to glow a faint green. Then were forcefully pulled apart, revealing 4 serpentine Cusin. Only one was armed, however, which immediately put the 2 injured Kryn at ease.
Hi, Deacon. We've got 2 more down in engineering. We'll need 2 more healers, as well as more mages. It looks like their power core has been heavily damaged.
The one in the lead said in high Cusin.
Yeah? Well, that would be our fault,
Yivtil piped up in their language.
Smart thinking. But what if we had been trying to kill you?
One of the Cusin said, as she slithered up to the 2 Kryn, a glowing metal rod in her hand.
We would have died anyway, whether or not our ship still had power,
Yivtil said as she groaned in relief.
Thanks for not killing us, by the way. Do you know how many of my people survived? I take it you're the captain of this ship, then?
The green-clad Cusin asked, her eyebrow ridge rising.
No, you want Captain Azalk. He's still stuck on the bridge the last time I checked,
Yivtil said with another groan.
I'm his second in command, Commander Yivtil. And this is our chief technician, Alls.
And you better not touch anything over there, you 2,
the chief said, shaking his only remaining limb at the 2 blue-garbed Cusin that were inspecting the broken power core.
She may be a broken piece of junk, but she's my broken piece of junk.
Apologies, Archmage,
the closest of the 2 Cusin said with a bow.
We mean no disrespect, and will not touch anything without your guidance.
The other one, however, did not stop his inspection of the power core for an instant.
How in all of creation were you able to inflict this kind of damage without destroying your whole ship? It should have overloaded and destroyed you all,
he gasped in amazement.
Trade secret, and I'm no wizard, or whatever you call it,
Alls said, as the green-robed Cusin in front of him attached some kind of device to his head.
You are the chief technician, yes?
The healer asked with a raise on eyebrow ridge.
We call all those that practice any form of applied science, or have a high degree of technical skill, mages. As you are the leader of the mages aboard this ship, that makes you the Archmage.
Well, thanks for the respect, but I'm not exactly an Archmage anymore,
Alls said, sweeping his remaining arm towards the dead bodies that littered the room.
My apologies,
the healer said, as she activated the 2 devices that she had placed on both Kryn's heads.
But you are still the Archmage, even if your colleagues have already passed beyond the Wall of Tears.
Neither of the 2 Kryn heard her, however, as they had already been rendered unconscious by the devices that she had placed on them.
Warrior, inform the priestess that it does seem that the ship turned upon her crew. Also inform her that With the addition of the commander and archmage, that brings the survivor count up to 13.
Actually, the count is 33. Charelle and her team just broke into medical and say that most of the healers there survived, due mainly to the ship's lockdown procedures.
The large Cusan corrected.
That's still not a lot. The crew complement of this ship is 350. That's a lot of dead or unaccounted for Kryn.
The healer said as she started to levitate the 2 broken Kryn onto stretchers.
It's still better than our initial estimates, all things considered,
the warrior said as he turned to leave the room.
Don't worry, kid. You'll be fine,
Sergeant Verlo said as she sprayed the private's wounds with biosealer.
This may hurt like the infernal pit, but at least you won't bleed out. I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't think the turret was going to throw a bouncer right then. I actually thought it had run out at that point,
the private said with a grimace.
6th rule of a firefight, kid. Never assume that the enemy has run out of anything. Even if they're dead, they might have rigged a dead man's switch to go off right after you nail him,
Verlo said as she finished wrapping the private up.
Yes, ma'am,
the private answered weakly.
Ma'am, we've whipped out the computer and we're installing a new one now. Corporal Swaz also reports that he can hear strange sounds coming from the other side of the exit door.
Verlo heard one of her privates say behind her.
Good. It's probably the Cusan. I've already received word from medical that they're on their way,
Verlo said as she stood up.
Keep helping Jor with that spare. I'll go see what the snakes have to say. I just hope they don't take too long to get the door open.
As it turned out, Verlo didn't have to wait long at all, as they had already begun to rip it out using their strange and natural abilities as she entered the computer core's main hall.
Hello? I heard that you have wounded down here,
Verlo heard someone saying Kryn as the door came loose. Verlo sunk into a semi-bow as the 3 green-clothed Cusan, followed closely by 2 blue-clad ones as well as soldiers, entered the room.
Yes, we do. They're on the back, near the computer core offices. Luckily, none of my team died, though we did lose most of our computer techs before we were able to rescue them.
Are any of them still conscious? We need to get the life support systems back online as soon as possible, and we cannot do that without a computer.
One of the blue-clad ones quickly piped in.
We have only one, but she is also one of our best. She's already working on getting the backup up and running, but it may take her some time. My soldiers aren't exactly trained to help in this kind of situation,
Verlo said, but trailed off when the blue ones quickly slithered past her.
Not to worry. We'll aid your mage in getting your computer running again,
one of them said in a rush as they left the hallway. They weren't the only ones to leave either, as they were quickly followed by the green-clad Cusan as well, leaving Verlo with the soldier that had accompanied them.
Wow, I'm impressed,
she said as the remaining snake person slithered closer.
By what, warrior?
The soldier asked through his helmet.
I was expecting you to be angry with us, to start shooting before we were able to surrender. It's only been 20 minutes since we lost power, though, and you already have techs and medics over here?
Verlo asked warily.
We work fast, though, to be honest, the blood-covered hallways were a convincing enough argument to let us know that this skirmish was not your fault,
the armored Cusan said as he shouldered his weapon.
How many did we lose?
Verlo asked, shutting her eyes. Her antennae would have been wriggling in agitation at that point, had she not lost them completely to a random energy blast from one of the point defense weapons.
We still don't know. Last I was informed, we had found roughly 150 dead, as well as 56 wounded, yourself included. In fact, with the exception of the people in medical, you are the least wounded we've found so far,
he said softly.
So that's
76 that have survived so far. With the exception of the bridge, I am afraid I am unfamiliar with the inner workings of your ship and have no idea how many staff.
80 then. It's usually the captain, the commander, the communications officer, and the helmsman,
Verlo said.
What about your tactical officer?
That would be the commander,
Verlo answered, her voice oddly dead.
Are you going to be all right?
The yet unnamed Cusin asked carefully.
No, not until that traitor has been forcefully shoved out an airlock,
Verlo spat out as she stomped angrily out of the hall. Hazalk sighed with relief as the lights came back on in the bridge, lifting the lockdown that it had been placed under.
Thank goodness. We were starting to run out of air. I need a status report now.
The computer reports a breach in our hull in Sector 7, though we're not venting atmosphere,
Talion quickly said.
That's probably the Cusin boarding party. What else?
The secondary computer is up and running and obeys all our commands. We should still run a diagnostic on it later, though, just in case.
Windalaz said.
In addition, I'm not getting any readings from our power core. It is likely that the Cusin boarding party has hooked up a spare, rather than repair ours. I'm unsure how good its output will be, though, so I would only suggest the basics for now.
Noted. Put us back into synchronous orbit, and...
Sir, we have a problem,
Talion interrupted, her antennae flattening behind her head in fear.
What is it?
There's a tactical drop pod missing, and Agent Illisk isn't in his cell. In fact, he's not on board at all,
Talion said shakily. The silence that followed this statement was oppressive, punctuated only by the faint ringing from Talion's console, letting them know that they were being hailed.
Open a channel,
Hazalk finally said, after he had had a chance to calm himself down a bit. This was going to be rather difficult to explain, but he hoped that the commander of the Cusin vessel was in an understanding mood. If you're enjoying this reading, consider checking out the non-copyright infringement version available on Amazon Prime. See link in video details for more information.